Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Way Between podcast. I'm your host, Adam Dietz, along with my co-host, Nick Egan. Hello, Nick.
Hey Adam, great to be here.
So, welcome to the first standalone episode of the Way Between podcast. The Way Between podcast is meant to be a bridge between old and new, east and west, between ourselves and bridging between ourselves and others. It's the way between. So, welcome. Very excited to begin this new project. And again, very excited to have Nick along with us. Today, we are going to start our thread of how philosophy evolved and how philosophy basically helps us live our lives well. So, what I've been noticing just in life as it's coming up is that there often, all throughout the years, there's a certain kind of angst that goes along with just everyday living. People have approached me recently and said, we'd like to hear more about how philosophy links in with simple stuff like just how we're living in our suburban lifestyle, how we're dealing with jobs and money and finance and taking kids to soccer practice, how hard to push them in their sport, how much to just hang back and let them do their thing. And that's what I have found to be the beauty of philosophy is that the true philosophy helps us with all those things. So today, what we want to do is kind of a dual project. We want to look at the roots of philosophy, and I was just talking with Nick a minute ago about how there's, for me, three tracks of that: Chinese, Indian, and Western. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on the Chinese element, but the point is, we are looking at the roots of Chinese philosophy for the sake of how it can help us live our lives today. And under that type of umbrella, we're looking at using yin energy and yang energy and how that can help us in our very lives today. So, Nick, do you have any thoughts about that as we just kind of get started here?
No, I mean I'm excited to start down the journey of the discussion. I definitely think there's a lot of richness. One of the things that is most amazing to me about really all philosophy, but especially Chinese philosophy, you can take these principles that are sort of broad and deep at the same time and really fractalize them out and understand essentially everything through that lens, through whatever particular lens. So in this case, we're talking about yin yang. But there are others too, right? And doesn't it's not exclusive in the sense that you learn one principle and then it excludes another principle. It's more like how might I understand life through this principle and how might I understand life through this other principle. So it's inclusive in that regard.
Yeah, and always applied, always
Hmm.
simple. Today
Hmm.
we'll touch on a little bit of Confucius and how Confucius wanted to take philosophy into the most practical places. So he
Hmm.
talks about how philosophy is the highest level is actually our humanity, coming in touch with our humanity. He talks about how learning through the human beings field of work is human relationships. I think we can
Hmm.
all empathize with that when we hear that. So we'll get into a little bit about Confucius, but I'm really happy to have Nick along for the conversation today. And right now, right off the bat, we're already hearing about how practical and the emphasis of simplicity, how Chinese philosophy really wants us to be able to use it in daily life.
Hmm.
Yeah. So basically, like I was saying before, hearing these type of problems, I had the reflection. These are problems, excuse me, problems of propriety.
Hmm.
Confucius always emphasized this word propriety. And really what he meant was these are social norms. Like what do we do that are normal? And what seems to me people are having trouble with is how do I live this so-called normal life, and it feels so fraught. It feels so topsy-turvy sometimes. And some of that has to do with the fact that propriety was always meant to be reformed. So the elites or the kings back then, but the elites should communicate with the people, and the people should communicate with the elites, and the elites and people should communicate to make propriety better, to serve the people, to allow people to have a richer, more harmonious life. So Confucius himself, he said that he didn't teach anything new. He actually only transmitted. He said he actually only tried his best to transmit the way of the ancient sage kings. And the ancient sage kings governed the country. It was a very idealized time in Chinese history that they governed the country through just music and propriety.
Hmm.
Have you heard of this before, Nick?
A little bit, yeah.
What do you think about that method? Is it possible to govern a country just through music and propriety?
Well, I mean, I think music, it goes to, I think what we're getting to, which is the yin and yang, right? So it's like propriety in some way, in this context, could be considered like the yang, which is like the outer behavior, and then where one fits in society, and then what the proper behavioral parameters are in order to live a just and happy life. And then the yin, I'm imagining in this situation, would be like the music element, which would ignite the soul, have to do with pleasure, have to do happiness, all of those kind of more intangibles. But one definitely feeds in and is in service to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. The I agree with you that the propriety, the outer structure,
Yeah.
and then the music is like actually a special type of music. We still have this instrument today, guzheng, and this special type of music is meant to be played at important moments. But the point is, this special type of music helps people empty their mind, calm their mind. So this is very yin to still your mind, or yin energy to still your mind. So yin energy we'll look at is very restful, calm, cool. And actually the character for it is the dark side of a mountain. And
Mhm.
then yang energy is very excited, spicy, action, movement. Yeah. So this is the difference. Often, our knowledge of this now in modern times is, oh, the dark side is very bad. And yang is very good, but actually it's just a balance. It's a balance. And as we look at it more and more, we're going to see how we can practice yin energy and practice yang energy to harmonize our lives. So we use, if something is very chaotic, then we need to use yin energy, restful energy, calm everything down, help harmonize. This also is something we'll look at a different episode called Doctrine of the Mean to balance things out. But yang energy, if something is feeling too stagnant, too stuck, sometimes we need to break through with really exciting energy, get it
Mhm.
moving, get it flowing. So we'll also look at how these can be practiced through using humble energy in our own mind, humble energy in our actions, or sincere energy where we go and we speak out and we use a lot of excitement. Does it sound like
Yeah.
something that you are familiar with yin and yang?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I mean, it definitely fits in the doctrine of the mean. I'm thinking about it was a teacher, I'm forgetting his name, a famous martial arts teacher that used to do all kinds of like he was really well known for like hard qigong, so like smashing bricks and doing like that really yang energy type practice. So iron palm especially. And then after he would practice that, he would go and play the flute or some other musical instrument or do some brushwork to be able to balance out his too much yang with some yin, right? And I really like what you said too about yin. I hear it's one of my biggest pet peeves in philosophy land. And it's about, yin and yang. It's like the bad and the good. People see in the West, it's like black is bad, white is good, right? And it's like the darkness is bad. So it's like it'll always balance out. And it's like that's completely not the case at all. It's more like, masculine, feminine, or rest and activity. And these two things are completely, they complement each other as opposed to one is overcoming another, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Really well said. And I like hearing you say that because it brings to mind the fact that in Chinese philosophy was it deeply influenced by Confucius, of course, but Chinese culture was deeply influenced. Chinese culture was deeply influenced to the point where I heard this story along the way at some point where for centuries, the students, the first sentence they learn to write when they're learning Chinese and calligraphy is that a human being is by nature good.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our natural state. We have some trouble when we deviate from our path or go the wrong way. Then it looks like we're have some badness to us. But this is out of harmony. Out of
Yeah.
harmony. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting because and you're much more well versed on the Chinese side than I am, but my thinking around that is that sentence was very much in the camp of Taoism and Confucianism and sort of a polemic against legalism, right? So like legalism is like, look, humans are inherently bad and therefore they have to be ruled with an iron fist. And the Taoists came through and they're like, look, if you adhere to the way of nature, adhere to the Tao, people are naturally good. And then Confucian's same, if you sincerity and propriety allow the goodness to shine forth.
We're actually getting very close. Both times we're talking, we're very close to the second stage of Confucianism, Mencius. So
Mm-hmm.
Mencius fights against, well, let's just say fights against, right? He tries to show that the country should be governed by humanity and righteousness,
Yeah.
not legalism. Okay, legalism is that the people must know all the laws and the rules, and they must be contained.
Hmm.
Okay, that was one philosophy that was competing with Mencius. Another philosophy was Moism, which
Hmm.
said that we should love everything equally under the sun as the sun spreads on everything equally.
Hmm.
So on one hand, you have legalism, and legalism, what does happen? Okay, you get at best a country when my I first heard from my first professor, undergrad, San Diego in the late 90s. So he called it, you get a country of well-trained shamus. Okay. But now I update this for my students. They know if you have legalism, then you have the program, you have the code, you have a country of NPCs,
Yeah.
non-player character, right?
Right, right.
So that's one hand is not good enough, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have Moism. Love everyone equally. Okay, so then you love the wolf and invite it into the nursery?
Yeah.
Also very bad. Instead, Mencius argued that you should teach people to understand their own humanity, their own righteousness, and they cultivate it. I think we should save this as a teaser for a later episode where Mencius says that he shows an argument of why human beings are good
Mhm.
and why people look evil and they're not. I
Mhm.
think we'll tease this for maybe a next episode or later.
We could
'Cause
talk about that because that dovetails nicely with like so the Buddhist perspective on that would be Buddha nature. So like everybody, every even the worst seeming person, the biggest villain you can imagine has Buddha nature. And so there are arguments as to like how you can prove that even somebody that does no good whatsoever can also have Buddha nature. And there's definitely distinct philosophical arguments about that that I think are quite good.
is a good tease for later.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
good, good,
Yeah,
good. So we have to remember to come back to it though, but I'm sure we won't forget. Right
yeah,
now, we're just wanting to stay on the track of giving the roots, like stick with a chronology, or else we'll bounce around too much. Because you can tell that when Nick and I are together and we're discussing, we get very excited.
yeah,
We get excited about philosophy because we know how much philosophy can help in daily life. We know how
yeah,
much philosophy can help give us insight into our actions, into other people's actions, and most of all, as we're talking here, help us harmonize.
yeah.
In Confucian philosophy, if you're harmonizing, you are actually doing the will of heaven in
Mhm.
your own field, your own time and space. You are doing the best thing you could possibly do for this whole world. So
Yeah.
now we look at that leads us very carefully to the ancient sage kings.
Mhm.
We'll look at maybe if we have time today, or also a teaser about how the ancient sage kings tried to make the whole world peaceful. And they have a method of step by step of how they did it. And that Confucius says we can also follow it. But anyway, we mentioned a few times now about the ancient sage kings. So who were they? What did they do? Without getting too much historic detail, we already mentioned that they made a very peaceful time. Everyone idealizes time as very peaceful. They helped regulate the rivers. They had developed the cultivation of rice. They say their wives developed the cultivation of silk. So these are things that were just wonderful and ancient, 1,000 years BC.
Discovered tea, my
Discovered
favorite.
tea,
Yeah.
which Nick and I are both big fans of course.
Yeah. Yellow Emperor, right?
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
had ginseng oolong.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I'm having some classic black tea right now, but
Okay,
it's late in
okay.
the afternoon. Yeah.
Very good, very good. So yeah, we still enjoying the fruits of their labor is the point, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But this Confucius said he wanted to transmit that time into his own time. His own time was disharmonious. But what else was he looking at that he was trying to transmit? One of the ancient sages was named King Wen. And one of the other sage kings also helped develop a system of yin and yang. Then King Wen systematized it into the Book of Changes, I Ching, with 64 hexagrams where yin line and yang line can actually form the entire situation that any human being can come into. So 64 hexagrams of yin combination of yin and yang, up to six of them, 64 different combinations. So those are the different kind of situations that can come up in life. And in each situation, we could either be at the very beginning of the situation or somewhere in the middle of the situation, or at the end of the situation. So for each situation in life, King Wen helped develop this system that no matter what, no matter how complicated, we can deal with just yin energy or yang energy. This, I think, is so profound and so helpful to people. It takes a complicated system of this entire life and just helps you understand, should I be more active or should I be more restful?
Yeah, it's interesting. In in Tibetan tradition, divination is a big practice by lay practitioners and with monks too. And it can be elaborate, it can be there's lots of different versions of it, but at its most simple, it can be as simple as like throwing dice. And I'm thinking about this because many Tibetans also will practice some form of I Ching divination because of especially in Eastern Tibet, which is, close to, well, far Western China.
Actually, think,
And
wow.
yeah, exactly. And so the thinking there is that every moment is holographically revealing its truth to you if you have a way of accessing it. And so another way to think about divination and all of those things that you can do is just sit with your own intention. If you can quiet your mind enough, you can get clear direction on what needs to happen, even the most complex situations.
Yeah, so study I Ching long enough, you know yin and yang, you don't need to divine. You
Yeah,
can do
exactly.
your own intuition. Now, just so
Exactly.
you know, I want to make sure this, I'm trying to make a big effort to make sure this project is accessible at every level. So if you feel like you are a very high-minded scholar and you're very well versed in these things, then please, you'll catch me on things and help me correct my mistakes of make so many. Nick is here to help me too. He's much more diligent than me on details
Not
often.
at all.
Uh, but also, I want everyone, even if you never heard of this type of thing before in your entire life, I want you to feel accessible to it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about I Ching and Nick talks about divination, this 64 hexagrams actually goes along with a system of divination.
Mhm.
So the system of divination is you cast some yarrow stalks, some sticks, and you collect them a certain way, and it helps you decide, capture that moment, and see where you are in life in that moment. And most importantly, for all of us to understand, most importantly, in that situation, do you recommend yin energy? Do you recommend yang energy? In that
Yeah.
situation, should you be more humble or should you be more active? So,
Mhm.
sometimes a situation in life is very big and there's no way you can do anything about it. You just stay humble and collect your energy and be peaceful. Then later, maybe you'll have an opening to use some active energy and go in and make something happen and help transform things.
Yeah. There's like the seed going back to the yin yang. There's a seed of action in inaction, right? And so it's like if the situation is calling for you to be humble or maybe more passive or maybe more still, it holds the future seed for further action, for future rising, for future whatever. And we need to be wise and patient in order to let that unfold at the proper time. So that way it has the biggest impact. Because sometimes what has the biggest impact is the stillness, is the humility.
Yes, and yin and yang also relate to heaven and earth.
Hmm.
So I'm really glad you mentioned that because as we're learning this yin and yang, we can have so many different images that help us learn it. So when you're talking about the stillness, this is yin energy, this is earth energy.
Hmm.
So earth energy just supports all things, allows them to flourish. So it is very still, calm, dark, like soil, dirt.
Hmm.
So when we use yin energy, we actually are very fertile.
Hmm.
So if a seed goes into the earth, the seed has some potential life. The seed is like a waiting young energy, waiting to
Hmm.
sprout. Then heaven and earth come together. Earth receives rain, earth receives sunlight. And so out of this stillness, out of this yin energy, out of this earth, then the sprout can come up yang energy tree, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So when you're mentioning that, that image comes very strongly to mind. So to think of what Nick was saying about what you were saying about the stillness, if we still our mind, calm our mind, this is what maybe you agree with me. 90% of philosophy is about once you do that, then you can see the seed of your own life, actually. You can see your own true nature, your own Buddha nature, your own yang energy, what makes you what makes you you, right? What makes you have life, what animates you, what gives you excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that stillness is the thing I think that is so easy to overlook or forget because it's so yin. And it's like, well, it's not so important, right? At least into my modern sensibility. And so it's important, I think, to remember that. And maybe even you don't want to overemphasize either side. Like this is all about balance and harmony. But at the same time, knowing that I maybe have the propensity to skip over the yin and just
Mm.
making that clear and visible in daily life, talking about daily life, like where am I finding time to rest? Where am I finding time to go slower for humility, all of that.
Well, that's very interesting because now we're going back to daylight. I've seen you use yin energy with your children.
Maybe.
So sometimes your child is too excited. It's like, well, I'm not gonna try and match their excitement energy. I'm just gonna let them kind of do their thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
can think of different examples when that's the case. You know, Nick and I are very good friends. We go back a long time. So Nick knows that my eldest is very mellow. So I need to
Yeah.
help him have some yang energy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true with kids. Like, and I feel like a lot of parents will match energy and then they wonder why things spiral out of control. If your kid has too much young energy, you try to meet it with young energy, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we have a big explosion, as opposed to like meeting the complementary, or vice
Yeah.
versa. Like, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting.
So this goes back now. I think we can bring this in now because when we're talking about ancient sage kings have to do with five classics of Confucian philosophy. One classic is the Book of Changes. Another that we mentioned before is Doctrine of the Mean. Doctrine of the Mean actually is of one of the four books we'll talk about later, but Doctrine of the Mean comes from one of the five classics, the Book of Propriety. It's
Hmm.
coming full circle, the Book of Propriety. So one of the five classics of ancient Chinese sage king philosophy that Confucius tried to transmit into his time is the Book of Propriety. One part of the Book of Propriety that's taken into the four most important next books, the four books, and is called Doctrine of the Mean. So doctrine of the mean is that each of us is like a fulcrum. Each of us is like the point of a teeter-totter, and that we need to help find balance in this life, that we are a nexus of balance in this life. Maybe we use more humble energy, maybe we use more excited energy to help balance out our destined. We're meant to be here. All time and space put us here to harmonize this teeter-totter in doctrine of the mean.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, that it's interesting to me because there's a great deal of skill that comes with it, or it's like an invitation to skill, but based on a kind of intuition, right? So it's like, how might I know how to balance? And it's like, well, if you're really clear-minded and you really get in touch with your intuition, whatever that might mean, you're going to find the results. And yeah, sometimes we have to do external kind of divination, but at the same time, to your point earlier, we have that divination capacity within us, and it has to do with sensitivity and awareness.
Very good. Very good. So I think we will end with this final thought that one of the four books is also called the Book of Mencius. Mencius is the second most important in Confucian philosophy. Mencius says, govern the country with righteousness.
Mhm.
And with Nick is talking about that we all have this intuition, Mencius tells a very clear story that every human being has righteousness. His example is this. Imagine, if you will, that you're walking along and you see a very tiny toddler, 1 or 2 years old, climbing towards a very shallow wall of a well. And you see them about to go into the wall and you're right next to them. Your first instinct will be to grab them. You will not let them go in that well and fall into that well. That will be everyone's first instinct. Before you think about the permutations of the situation, before you think about anything else, you'll grab that baby. If you want to update that, it's like if you're standing on a street corner and you see a toddler about to walk into a busy street, you will put your hands out no matter who you are. Your first instinct will be to put your hands out.
Mhm.
For Mencius, this shows that all human beings have righteousness. And that if we govern this, then we are sending forth every citizen to do their very best in their own nexus of harmony, and that will be the best way to govern the country.
Hmm.
Do you have a final thought?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the arguments in Buddhism, like we were talking about earlier, about how to discover somebody's Buddha nature. And the idea was even if somebody is doing something negative to somebody else, like even if you're torturing somebody or causing pain intentionally, you still have to know what would cause pain to somebody. And so therefore you know that they don't like that. And the fact that you can empathize with that they don't like that is proof that you yourself know what you wouldn't like. And that's proof that you have Buddha nature, right? So like deep down, even if you throw a bunch of dirt on top of it, you still have fundamentally a positive Buddha nature.
Oh, you're going against the principle somehow. You know it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's allowing you to be the torturer or whatever it is.
Ooh.
So either way, whether you're saving babies or torturing, you have Buddha nature
Oh
and
man.
your
Yeah.
positivity.
So
Yeah.
everyone just do the saving babies, no torturing until next
Yeah.
time. I
That's
thank
right.
you so much
Exactly.
for joining us on the Way Between podcast. We look forward to getting to know you and you getting to know us more and more. And I just have thank Nick so much for coming on. I just really appreciate any time we could spend
Oh,
together.
yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm always excited to be here.
Yeah.
Look forward to the
So
next one.
yeah, so in the meantime, if you want to reach out to us, I think the best thing to do is actually just go on to search up the Way Between podcast on YouTube, and you can just hit us up in the comments. Obviously, we love doing this. We want to do it more and more. So any likes and subscribes and shares and comments, especially in the beginning, helps so much. So please don't hesitate to give us some of that coming your way whenever you can.
Yeah, for sure. See you next
Okay,
time.
thanks again. Until next time, everybody. Bye.
Take care.